in the kind of post-colonial situation we're in now, you obviously explore kind of whiteness and its implications for this kind of as a system of domination. And it also resonated you talk about assimilation for people at the margins, the way they attempt to assimilate. And so, in my own history, so my middle name is Eamon, which is an Irish name, and it's my granddad's name. But I got his birth certificate recently, and on it says Edward because it's a kind of British colony. So he had to kind of pretend or try to assimilate and try to get rid of the local names. And then similarly on the Jewish side, there's I had some certificates looking at ancestry stuff from some Jewish ancestors whose name was Barzilay. And then you suddenly see when they move to London, it becomes Busby, which is just this kind of, this pretense of
Wow.
trying to get rid of anything that sounds anything, other than just kind of other than British. So yeah, I think you also talk about the decision to talk about it as whiteness versus white supremacy, and a friend who was kind of counseling you to not upset people by calling it white supremacy, right?
Yeah, I really value being able to code switch, basically. And so there are spaces where I'll talk about white supremacy, till the cows come home. Like I know that people understand what I mean by using that phrase.
Right.
And there's a way in which we're so not intimate kind of with our own pain and the harm we've felt and the harm that we've caused. And so especially for white people, or it can be for many non-Black people as well, the phrase white supremacy brings up kind of, anxiety, fear, confusion, shame, feelings of being blamed or accused. And so it shuts them down from actually being able to listen to what's being shared. So I really try and break it down, mostly by using a lot of examples of the ways I've experienced that, the ways I've been diminished or attacked. And, I don't have, although I didn't put in any my encounters with the police, which I've had a number of, but, I use kind of examples that aren't, that are very ordinary in some ways. They're just kind of interactions I had when I was a kid or at the airport, to just show the way that this functions in our society in a very casual and internalized level, so that it doesn't become like this thing that you're being called, a horrible person because you've internalized these systems and patterns, but you can just see how this is a factor of our world, that this is held up, whiteness is held up as supreme. And it's something that people are reaching for through assimilation. And, I bring up the issue of skin whitening cream, which is something that you find all over the world. Every market I've been in and all the continents I've been in has it. And so there's a literal like reaching for a lighter shade. And, we can see it in your royal mess at the moment. Like there's, there's a lot of nuances and kind of a lot of shades to this, no pun intended.
Yeah. You also, when you're explaining white supremacy in the book, there's a kind of a place where you explain it particularly neatly, I think, where you're kind of describing how whiteness is defined by effectively by people being not white because it's seen as the default. So it's not that whiteness actually exists in some deep sense. It's a cultural construct where, at a certain time, Southern Europeans in America are considered not white because they're not the kind of Northern European Protestants, or Jewish people. And then gradually, it's not that over time anything
even
really
Irish
changes.
People.
Right, exactly, yeah. So my ancestors may have been not considered white, which seems crazy from the modern lens, where most people, it'd be hard first to find someone who'd say I wasn't white. And so, but nothing's changed. There is no racial construct genetically or biologically that has morphed or anything. And so I think that's a particularly powerful way of saying there's an asymmetry here. Not to say that other racial constructs have biological basis, but the way that we take whiteness to be the default and that it morphs in this way. I think it's a good way for people maybe to understand that it's the way it's put on a pinnacle compared to a pedestal compared to everything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it continues in maybe more subtle ways, but it really it's so woven into the fabric of of global society now. So, we can sort of point our fingers at certain communities and say that or certain countries or continents and say it doesn't affect people in South Asia, but actually Asia is the largest growing industry for skin whitening cream. It's $1 billion industry. And so it's really insidious, the way this really ideology spreads.
Right. Yeah, and I guess ultimately there's a reaching for belonging there, right? I think you use this phrase like reaching for whiteness, where people uh, want to belong, and then the culture is telling them the way to belong is to, or effectively they're saying you don't belong, and then what are you going to do in that situation apart from try to be as close to the dominant group as possible, because that's where belonging seems to be.
Yeah, and again, it's that kind of fool's gold at the center, where we're made to feel that there's a limited amount of resources and a limited amount of power, even. And so everyone's trying to get to that center to get access to that. And I really, again, do believe it's fool's gold, that the richness of resources and power is actually, if we kind of all get in the circle.
Right. You also mentioned this quote from Krishnamurti that's along the lines of you think your own thoughts, but you actually think the culture's thoughts, which is great, and kind of gets to this issue of the way we internalize these structures of oppression, and we have this kind of unconscious or implicit bias against people. And yeah, you also say that it's, when it comes to these things, it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility, which I think is great, because we see again and again that as soon as this topic is raised, unconsciously people in the dominant group can get triggered by it and feel that they're being kind of targeted in some way, or they're being blamed, that they're bad. What we're saying is, in essence, if you're white, you are kind of, in your core, you are a bad person, as opposed to recognizing that we're talking about systems and forces that can manifest through us, and it's our responsibility to try to do something about it, but we're not kind of bad people in some deep sense, because if we don't notice them.
Yeah, we think it's weird. It's like this paradox. Like, we think we have no power when we have we have the capacity for so much. We have so much potential, but we also think that we have so much control. But when in fact, like, every single thing we've learned has come from the outside in some way. All the ideas and the language and the conceptions and the ideologies, like, they are constructed for us. And so it is our responsibility to see that and start to undo what has been unconsciously constructed, in order to actually create or imagine a better way.